Kazi's heart pounded in his chest as the stampede of wildebeest thundered past him. He tried to keep up, his small legs moving as fast as they could, but the chaos was overwhelming. The ground shook with each step of the massive herd, the air thick with dust, and the frantic cries of panicked animals. Kazi's mother, just ahead of him, was too far now, lost in the tide of bodies. He called out to her, his voice tiny in comparison to the roar of the stampede, but his cries were drowned out by the frantic rush of hooves. He stumbled, falling onto his side, barely able to rise before the herd swept past him, uncaring, unseeing. Fear twisted in his stomach as he pushed himself up, his legs weak, his chest tight with panic. He looked around desperately, his golden eyes wide with terror, but all he could see was the moving mass of wildebeest, none of them stopping to help him, none of them offering any comfort. The herd's momentum carried it forward, and Kazi was left behind, alone in the thickening dust. He could still hear the pounding hooves, but they were growing fainter, the noise fading into the distance. His heart raced faster as he scanned the open field, searching for his mother, for any sign of her. His paws ached, his body tired, but the panic kept him moving, kept him searching, unwilling to give up. "Mother," he called again, his voice trembling, the word carrying with it all the desperation he felt. But no answer came. The dust settled, and in its wake there was nothing but silence. Kazi's breath hitched as he realized the truth. He had been separated from his pride. He was alone in a world too big, too unforgiving for a young cub like him. He stood still, the enormity of the situation sinking in. His mind raced, his body trembling, but he forced himself to take a step forward, hoping to find a path, a clue, something that would lead him back to his mother. But the more he searched, the more he realized how small he was, how helpless. The wild, which had once felt like home, now seemed like a dangerous and unfamiliar place. Kazi's stomach growled, a sharp reminder that he was no longer under his mother's protection. Hunger gnawed at him, and the fear of being lost deepened. He didn't know how long he had been alone, but he knew one thing for sure: he needed to survive. And to do that, he would need to find his way back. But as the sun dipped lower, the shadows growing longer, Kazi could feel the weight of the world pressing down on him, the cold realization sinking deeper into his bones. He was on his own now. Kazi's legs were sore from running, his small body trembling with exhaustion. He had no idea how long he had been searching, how many hours had passed since the stampede scattered the herd and took his mother from him. The landscape around him was vast, and yet it felt so empty. The trees stood silent, the tall grasses swayed in the wind, but there was no sign of his pride. He could barely keep his eyes open, his energy spent, but the need to find his mother kept him moving. The weight of loneliness was unbearable. Every step seemed harder than the last, and the fear gnawed at him like a constant shadow. His instinct told him to keep going, to never stop, but there was a part of him, small and frightened, that wanted to give in, to curl up in the tall grass and wait for someone to find him. But he couldn't. He had to keep going, even if the world around him felt like it was closing in. Kazi stumbled, his paws giving out beneath him, and he collapsed onto the ground. His breathing came in shallow gasps, and for a moment he just lay there, defeated. The world around him was silent, too silent. No calls of his mother, no distant roars from the pride. Just the sound of his own heartbeat and the rustle of the wind. His body ached, but it wasn't just his physical pain that hurt. It was the deep, aching emptiness inside. He missed his mother. He missed her warmth, her soft touch, the way she would nuzzle him when he was scared. She had always been there, and now she was gone. The thought of never finding her, of being alone in this wild and unforgiving place, made Kazi's heart feel like it was breaking. With a strained effort, he pushed himself to his feet. His body felt weak, but the instinct to survive burned bright within him. He couldn't give up now. Not when he was this close. He didn't know how much further he could go, but he had to try. His stomach growled again, a painful reminder of his hunger. He had no food, no water. The fear of what might happen if he didn't find anything to eat was beginning to take hold of him. He knew he was vulnerable, a small cub in a world full of predators, but the thought of giving up made him feel even more lost. So, he walked, head low, eyes scanning the surroundings for any sign of life, any hope that would lead him back to his pride. Just as he thought he couldn't go on, he heard a sound. It was faint at first, barely a rustle in the grass, but to Kazi it was everything. A flicker of hope, a lifeline. He moved toward it, his steps slow but filled with a newfound determination. He didn't know what he would find, but he knew that he couldn't stop now. His survival depended on it. And in that moment, no matter how small or weak he felt, Kazi knew he had to keep fighting. Kazi's steps grew more hesitant as he moved through the tall grasses, his senses heightened. He had been following the sound, that small glimmer of hope, but as the minutes stretched on, the rustle in the grass began to fade. His heart pounded with a mix of exhaustion and fear. What if he had imagined it? What if he was still alone in the world, lost and forgotten? Just as doubt began to settle in, Kazi's ears perked up. The sound returned, soft at first, then louder. Something was approaching, something moving through the grass. His paws tingled with nervous energy. He froze, his eyes darting around, searching for the source. And then, from behind a bush, a figure emerged. Casey's first instinct was to run, to hide, to protect himself from whatever danger might be near. But as the creature stepped into the open, his fear faltered. It wasn't a predator. It was a human. A woman, dressed in simple clothes, holding a water bottle in her hand. She paused when she saw Kazi, her eyes widening in surprise and disbelief. For a moment, neither of them moved. Kazi stood motionless, unsure of what to do, while the woman's gaze softened with something that resembled compassion. She didn't make any sudden movements. Instead, she crouched down, her voice gentle but firm. "Hey there, little one," she said softly. "Are you lost?" Casey blinked, his body still tense, but the sound of her voice, calm and soothing, slowly eased the fear in his chest. She wasn't like the humans he had seen before, the ones who carried weapons and threatened his pride. This woman was different. She didn't seem like a danger, but he wasn't sure he could trust her. Her eyes never left him as she set the bottle down, keeping a respectful distance. "I'm not going to hurt you," she said, her voice full of kindness. "I know you're scared." Kazi felt something stir inside him, an impulse to trust her, to let go of his fear. He had been so alone for so long, the fear of survival constantly pressing against him. This woman's calm presence was like a small beacon of light in the darkness. Slowly, cautiously, Kazi took a step forward, his stomach growling as the scent of water filled the air. The woman smiled, the corners of her eyes crinkling with warmth. She gently nudged the bottle closer to him, offering it as if she were offering him a chance. Kazi didn't hesitate this time. He approached the bottle slowly, his body still weary, but his thirst overwhelming. When he took the first drink, the cool water felt like salvation. It was more than just water, it was hope. A moment of kindness in a world that had shown him nothing but fear. She watched him as he drank, her gaze soft with understanding. Kazi felt a strange sense of comfort in her presence, a sense of safety he hadn't felt since he was with his mother. For the first time in a long while, he didn't feel alone. And in that moment, the fear that had weighed on him so heavily began to ease, replaced by something even more powerful, the desire to survive. This woman, this stranger, had given him something he didn't even know he needed, the kindness that made him believe he could keep going. Kazi finished the water and sat back on his haunches, still watching the woman closely. She didn't move, just watched him in return, her expression calm. There was something about her that made Kazi feel seen. The wild had taught him how to survive, how to be strong, but no one had ever looked at him the way she did, like he mattered. He looked away, feeling a pang of shame. He wasn't meant to be like this. Alone. Helpless. He was supposed to be with his pride, protected by his mother. But that world felt so far away now, so unreachable. The world around him was vast, dangerous, and silent. The woman's voice broke through his thoughts, soft yet steady. "I'm Maya," she said, her gaze never leaving him. "You've been through a lot, haven't you?" There was no pity in her voice, just a quiet understanding. Kazi felt his throat tighten at the words. He hadn't realized just how much he had been bottling up, how much he missed the warmth of his mother's presence, how desperately he wanted to return to his pride. Maya didn't ask him to speak, she simply sat there, allowing the silence between them to be filled only by the wind and the occasional rustle of the grass. Her kindness was a balm to his raw emotions, and for a moment he let himself feel it. For the first time since the Stampede, Kazi allowed himself to be vulnerable. He was walking to find his family, to return to the place where he belonged. The landscape around him had changed, becoming more familiar as he drew closer to the migration path. His heart beat faster with every step, a mix of hope and fear twisting in his chest. He could smell the scent of other lions on the wind, and the realization hit him all at once. His pride, his mother, they were out there. The fear that had once held him back now pushed him forward. For the first time since the Stampede, Kazi felt like he was in control. His steps were purposeful, his movements filled with determination. He wasn't just a helpless cub anymore. He was a lion, capable of surviving in the wild on his own. Maya had given him that strength, even though she hadn't been the one to teach him how to hunt or fight. She had given him something far more powerful, belief in himself. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows over the land, Kazi heard the distant sounds of the pride. The familiar growls and roars sent a wave of relief through him. He pushed himself harder, his pace quickening. His mother's voice echoed in his memory, the way she would call to him when he strayed too far. He followed the sounds, each step bringing him closer to home. When he finally reached the edge of the pride's territory, Kazi hesitated. The sight of them, his pride, his family, made his heart race. He spotted his mother among the others, her golden fur shining in the fading light. She was standing tall, her head raised high, scanning the horizon as she always did. But when she saw him, when her eyes met his, the world seemed to stop. Her face softened, and Kazi's heart swelled with an emotion so powerful it almost brought him to his knees. Without a second thought, he ran toward her, his legs carrying him faster than he ever thought possible. His mother's roar broke the silence of the evening, a sound of recognition, of relief. She met him halfway, and in that moment, Kazi felt the warmth of her embrace, the safety he had longed for. His mother nuzzled him gently, her voice low and soothing as she spoke. "I knew you would find your way back," she whispered. Kazi's eyes filled with tears, the weight of the journey finally lifting from his shoulders. He had made it. He had found his way home. And as he looked around at the pride, he realized that Maya's kindness had not only helped him survive, it had given him the strength to return to where he belonged, to the family that would protect him. He had never been more grateful, not just for his mother's embrace, but for everything that had brought him to this moment. The wild was harsh, yes, but it was also full of surprises, full of unexpected kindness. And Kazi had learned, through it all, that sometimes even the smallest acts of compassion could guide a lost soul home. Kazi lay beside his mother that night, the familiar sounds of the pride surrounding him, the warmth of her body offering him a peace he hadn't felt in so long. The world, once so vast and terrifying, now felt small and safe. He could hear the distant calls of the other lions, the rustle of the grasses, the quiet hum of the night. But none of it scared him now. He was home. He was with his family again. His mother, her golden eyes soft with pride, nuzzled him gently, her presence a constant reminder of everything he had survived to get here. Casey looked up at her, his heart full of emotions he couldn't quite put into words. He had wandered through the wild, unsure and scared, but now he understood something that Maya had given him, a gift that went beyond survival. Maya had shown him that kindness, even in the darkest moments, was what had kept him going. It was what had brought him back to the pride. As Casey lay there, his thoughts drifted back to that woman, Maya, who had saved him when he was at his weakest. He remembered the way she had spoken to him, her voice calm and steady, her eyes filled with compassion. She had been a stranger, yet in her he had found something deeper than just a temporary rescue. She had given him a reason to keep fighting, a belief that he was worthy of kindness, of care. In her presence, Kazi had learned that he wasn't alone in the world, that even in a place so wild and unforgiving there was still good. The pride began to settle for the night, each lion finding its place to rest. Kazi's mother stayed close, her body protectively pressed against his. As he closed his eyes, the thoughts of his journey began to fade into a peaceful stillness. He had found his way back, and he knew, deep in his heart, that his story, his survival, wasn't just his own. It was a story of all those who had helped him along the way, even in the smallest of ways. The kindness that had guided him had come from unexpected places, but it had been there when he needed it most. He wasn't sure what he expected from this encounter, but it certainly wasn't the comfort he felt now. The human seemed to understand that he didn't need to be forced to show his pain. He needed time, patience, and space. Maya didn't ask him questions, didn't pressure him to do anything. She simply waited, a calm presence in the storm of his fear and uncertainty. Maya reached into her bag and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. Kazi's curiosity piqued, but he didn't move. She unfolded the cloth and revealed a small piece of meat, a piece she must have brought with her. She held it out to him, and for a moment, Kazi didn't react. This wasn't like the food he was used to. This wasn't the meat his pride would hunt together, shared among the members, but something in Maya's eyes told him this was different. She was offering him sustenance, not as a survival tactic, but as an act of kindness, as a gesture of care. He approached cautiously, his hunger making him hesitate. His instincts told him to be cautious, to stay away from humans, but Maya had already shown him something that his wild instincts couldn't ignore: kindness. Tentatively, he took the meat from her hand. She didn't flinch, didn't move away. Kazi chewed slowly, feeling the warmth of the food fill his empty stomach. It was more than just food. It was hope, the strength to keep going. With every bite, he felt the raw edges of fear begin to soften. Maya had given him a chance to survive, a chance to believe that he could find his way home. And for the first time in what felt like forever, Kazi began to believe that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't alone in the world after all. The days that followed felt like a blur to Kazi. Maya was with him, caring for him, and though the world still felt vast and unforgiving, there was something different now. The loneliness that had gnawed at him, that empty, cold place inside, began to shrink with every moment she spent beside him. She showed him where to find more water, where to rest in the shade when the sun grew too hot. Kazi, though still wary and uncertain, began to trust her more. Maya never forced him to do anything. She simply gave him the space to heal, her calm presence a silent promise that he wasn't alone in this vast wilderness. Every time he looked at her, she was there, patient and steady. as if she understood his fears better than anyone. The hunger that had once felt so desperate began to subside, replaced by a growing sense of strength. Maya's care was more than physical. It was like a gentle anchor in a storm, something Kazi had never known he needed. One evening, after he had eaten and rested, Maya looked at him with a softness in her eyes. She didn't speak at first, but her gaze told him that she knew something was changing. Kazi could feel it too. His body was stronger now, his legs no longer trembling with each step. The hunger had passed, replaced by a quiet but powerful resolve. Maya had given him more than just food and water. She had given him the ability to stand again, to hope again. Kazi stayed close to her for as long as he could, following her as she walked through the grasses, always keeping his distance but always there. He had learned to trust her. She had shown him that there was still good in the world, that even in the midst of the wild, kindness could be found. It was a lesson he would carry with him, no matter where he went. But now, as the days passed, he began to feel something else stir deep inside, a need to return to his pride, to find his mother, to reunite with the family he had been torn from. Maya, too, seemed to sense this. One morning, as the sun rose in a pale wash of light, she turned to him. There was no sadness in her eyes, only understanding. She placed a hand on his back, gently guiding him forward. "It's time, Kazi," she whispered. "You're strong enough now. You can go back. You're ready." Her words broke something inside him, something he hadn't realized was still holding him back. Kazi looked at her, his eyes full of silent gratitude. He didn't have the words to thank her, not in the way he wished to, but Maya had given him the most important gift of all, the chance to live, to find his way back to where he belonged. With one last look at her, Kazi turned toward the horizon, his steps sure and steady. The wild had always been his home, but now he carried a piece of something more: kindness. And that, he knew, would guide him back to the ones he loved. Kazi moved through the grass with a new sense of purpose, his legs strong and steady beneath him. He was no longer the scared cub that had stumbled through the wilderness, lost and alone. The memories of his time with Maya still lingered in his mind. Her soft voice, her gentle touch, the way she had shown him kindness when he had needed it most. But now, as he walked toward the distant hills, he could feel the weight of his journey pressing on him. He wasn't just walking to find food or water anymore.